All right, today we are going to be doing something very cool, which is a scroll effect on text. So basically, once you scroll, the text kind of expands. It has layers. So the inspiration was this website here, Code Drops. If you have never heard of it, check it out. It's very cool. They have, I think, 5 effects that you can choose from. I chose this one because it looked pretty cool. So let's get into it. All right, let's start building this cool effect. So first thing we're going to be doing is adding a container to this page, and this container will just have a full width and nothing else. We're not going to do anything else to this. And the reason we want it full width is because we want the text to reach left and right both sides of the page and to look pretty nice and long. All right, I'm not going to set the height of the container because this will be given by the CSS code. Let's also add a text editor. And if you're wondering why I'm using the text editor, is because I want to leverage the option where we can add HTML code in here. I know that you can add obviously HTML code in the HTML widget, but I honestly kind of prefer to have it here together with the CSS and the script in the HTML tag. Don't ask me why, this is how I do it. So my structure in here, my HTML structure, and let me explain. I know it looks funny right now, makes no sense, right? Let me fix the indentations. So that's 1, that's 2, and I will explain the code. So first we have the wrapper. Obviously the wrapper is the div that actually holds all our text, all our texts, and we call this a wrapper. Of course, you can change these classes, any of these classes and IDs, but remember to change them everywhere in the code, in the CSS code, in the GSAP code, everywhere, because I know some people try these code snippets that I give and they forget to add classes or the right classes, and they don't know why things don't work. So please first try to debug these things yourself, learn how to debug because it's so important, and then ask for help. Always try first. Try to fix it yourself first. Okay, enough with the rant. So what we're doing here is basically adding a main text, the text that you see on the page, like this, right? And next we add its shadows. So the next divs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, are basically the divs that appear behind the main text. So we have the main text here, yeah? And once you scroll, you see its shadows coming X and Y axis a little bit diagonal. So this is how this effect works. All right, enough with that. Again, please remember, if you change the classes, change them everywhere accordingly. Change one class at a time, like I mean the name of it, so you don't get lost in that, especially if you're doing this for the first time. So in my text editor, I am going to drop in my CSS in just one moment. And I'm gonna drop it right here because I like to have things kind of compact and to know where I have them and to look for them. Let's start with our wrapper and the height property here. Obviously this can be increased or decreased. That means that the container has a bigger or smaller height. So let's say if we say 100, obviously you're not going to see the effect now, but you can see it already in the preview how it would look, right? Okay, for now I'm gonna leave it at 40 because it doesn't help in any way, and we're gonna come back to this. All right, I will explain this once we have the effect working because there's something that needs to be seen to be explained. And then we have the opacity. As you can see, we have the opacity at 0. If I turn it on to 1, we see our text there. But we don't want the text to be up on the page before we start scrolling. We want the effect to have a fade-in effect, kind of. So it starts at opacity 0 and of course it goes to opacity 1, and this effect is changed in the GSAP script. Enough for now. Let's go and style our text editor. I'm gonna turn this to Sora, and of course you can use whatever font you want. Make sure that it's a font that looks good for this effect. Play around obviously, and I'm gonna make it super bold and transform uppercase. Let's see how this looks if we go to, oops, let's go to our CSS and set this to 1, or just delete it if you want. And this is how it looks. I know we have an overflow here and we will fix this, but not yet. All right, let me turn this to 0 and update, and that's it. Okay, now we need to add our GSAP to see how this effect works, and you will not see that much yet because we need to add some space top on bottom for this effect obviously to work. So let me add, actually I will drag it on to create another container. I'm gonna drag in an HTML element and paste my GSAP code here, and voila. Let me fix these indentations. All right, as you can see, we're using the ID that is in the CSS code as well as the class for the text. And as I was saying, this is the opacity. So the opacity changes to 1. Also, we have the markers turned off here, but I'm going to turn them on for the purpose of this video, so you know what they do and how they help with debugging basically your GSAP. And then we will talk about this and how you can adjust this as well. So let me publish this and let's have a look. So the text is already there because there's no space for us to scroll. There's nothing at the top of the text. So let me go back and I'm just going to add a container at the top. Why are you doing this? Elementor. Let me give this some padding top. Honestly, what is that about? All right. So I'm not going to style this in any other way, but give it a height of 100 ph. So we have ample space to scroll. And these are the markers I was talking about. So our animation starts here and it ends here. So keep an eye for that. It starts here and it ends there. All right, let's add another container, or we could give this container where the HTML is sitting. We can give this 100 VH. All right, let's try it again. So it starts about here, which is true, and it ends here. And that's it. Let's go to our container, and I am going to add a little bit of text at the top to play a little bit with the CSS and see what you can do with it. And I already have prepared another text editor. I'm going to add it in here and move it up. And let's see. Oops. And that's the distance between our text and our other text. Okay, I'm also going to add another element in this container because I want to show you something that you can do with the code that is going to make things look pretty cool. All right. So this is how it looks. I mean, it's not too bad actually at all. The distance between the text and the loop marquee thing. All right, let's go to the text editor that holds the text. Let's go to advanced and let's go to our wrapper. And if I'm going to give this 100 VH, as you can see, we have a lot of space between the elements. And if this is something that you want to achieve, then do this. So this is how it works. And let's go back. And if you want to change the position to vertically of your text on the page, basically, you would change it here. So let's say if I go 70%, let's see what happens. Yeah. So this is how you can move the text up and down on the container and place it however you like and however works for your use case. So I'm gonna leave it at, it was 50, no, 30. and this one at 40. Let's talk about the transform property here. As you can see, it's set at 50, but what if we set it at 150 minus 150? Let's have a look. Yeah, this happens. I mean, if you have a little bit more space between the elements, the text will be somewhere kind of like, it looks like it's stuck to the page, and then as you scroll, kind of like goes into it pretty abrupt, sort of, and it does this parallax effect. Let's say 70. Of course, play with these values and adjust them as needed. As you can see, this is a little bit less jumpy or abrupt. Of course, you would have to have a little bit more space between the text and the other elements on the bottom, but I think it's pretty cool. It gives a little bit more life to a static website, especially if you don't use too many animations, interactions. It gives a little bit more life. I'm gonna leave it at 50. All right, so that's about it here. There's nothing you should change or do. What we have to go to do and explain is HTML, the GSAP code. So first of all, this is where you change the start and the end of your animation. So let's see what happens if you set it to 50 top and 50 bottom. The markers will be set at the middle of the page, and that's where your animation starts. So it doesn't start until right here, which is pretty cool. In this case, where you have less space to work with, the animation doesn't go all crazy and starts before anything is shown and doesn't start at a weird spot on the page. So this is how you adjust these things. This is actually really interesting. I mean, this is actually really good. Okay, let's go back to our text, and if you want to remove the markers, you could just delete them or say false. I would actually leave them on just in case you change your mind and you want to change things on the page. You still have access to them by turning them to true. As you can see, they're gone. All right, so another thing that you can change is the Y and X axis of the shadow. So the shadow text that you can see on behind the main text, you can either make it less diagonal or more expanded on scroll. So let's change the value from 15 to 5 on the X axis, and let's see what happens. It looks a little bit like it's blurry. It has a weird effect. And if you go to say 25, set it to 25, this is what happens. And honestly, I would say 15 is the right in-between value. I think it's pretty good. And also the Y-axis, let's set it to 40. As always, play with these values, see what works for you. Yeah, I'm not a fan, to be honest. But you know that these values can change, and if you need to, you can change them from here. Let's say 10. Maybe 10 is not that bad. It's a bit more condensed. Yeah, so again and again, just play with these values and see what looks good for your case. And this works also on mobile. If you're wondering, I tested it, so it works. As always, the code will be in the description below. Make sure that you follow the steps accordingly. Whenever you change the classes, please look twice, think twice, debug, and that's it. If you'd like to see what else you can build with Elementor, watch this playlist here or here. And if you have gotten any value out of this video, please consider subscribing, liking, and sharing this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.